No More Tomorrows Part 1, The Message Chapter 1, The Transfer. Mara, present day, Lagos. The message came in just after dawn, in that moment between dreams and duties. Mara had been awake but not risen, her son's small feet pressed against her thigh as he murmured in his sleep. The air was heavy with harmattan dust, the kind that coats everything in a thin layer of remembering. She saw the alert first, 500,000 deposited. Then the message. Greater than this is the last sum of money I'm giving you. After all, we had a sincere relationship. Please cherish it. Let bygones be bygones. Please take good care of my youngest son. Please don't contact me anymore in the future. I've already formed a new family, and don't want my family to be disturbed. Mara read it 3 times before the meaning bloomed. She read it once with disbelief, once with anger, and the 3rd time with something close to silence. Not peace, no. Just silence. She sat up in bed. Kelechi's feet slid off her leg, and he turned over, his small mouth falling open in that familiar, slack-mouthed way that made her want to cry some mornings. He looked too much like Ayo when he slept. She stared at the phone screen again. The light from it painted her face pale blue. She could see her reflection in the darkened glass once it dimmed, like her face had been caught between 2 lives. The woman before this message and the woman now. Ayo had always been articulate, almost poetic. Even his rejection had rhythm. Please don't contact me anymore in the future. Clean. Sharp. Final. But it was the part that stung more deeply than the rest. Take good care of my youngest son. As if Kelechi was a parcel. As if he had packed the boy away with the rest of his past. As if love had a receipt. Mara rose quietly, stepping over the scattered crayons on the rug. She walked to the kitchen, poured water into the kettle, and set it on the stove. Her hands moved mechanically. Bread. Butter. Tea. This was how you survived, by moving. One task after the next, like beads on a thread. The kettle screamed before she did. She poured the water, stirred the tea with trembling fingers. Then she sat at the small table, looking at the chair where Ayo used to sit, shirtless, laughing, licking peanut butter from the tip of a knife. Let bygones be bygones, he wrote. But the past didn't bury itself just because someone declared it dead. They had met 6 years ago at a wedding in Ilorin. He wore a navy blue kaftan, and a crooked smile. She remembered thinking his voice felt like Sunday mornings, soft, unrushed, meant for something lasting. He spoke of things with conviction. God, politics, his dreams. He talked about leaving something behind for his children, even though he had none then. That night, he had danced like a man who forgot the world owed him pain. She had laughed too freely. They'd shared a bottle of malt under the stars, and he had leaned in close and asked, "You ever wonder what life would be like if you just started over?" Now, he had started over. Without her. Without Kelechi. The tears came without warning. Not a storm, not even a drizzle, just 2 clean lines down her cheeks. She did not sob. Grief sat differently when it arrived slowly, like dust settling after demolition. She thought of calling her sister, Ada, but what would she even say? He sent money and a funeral notice for the relationship. Ada would hiss through her teeth and say, "Na wa oh. That man. He's a coward. A class A coward." But Mara knew it wasn't cowardice alone. It was something colder. It was entitlement wrapped in manners. It was a man who believed that good grammar could excuse abandonment. She picked up the phone again and stared at the digits. 500,000 naira. The amount felt both too much and too little. Enough to insult her. Not enough to compensate for the crater he left in Kelechi's chest. She opened the savings app, stared at the balance, and then turned the phone face down. She wouldn't touch it. Not yet. Money. A small voice floated in. She turned. Kelechi stood in the hallway, his blue pajamas rumpled, eyes still swollen from sleep. "You're crying," he said, rubbing his own eyes. She wiped her face quickly. No. It's just the pepper. I was cutting onions. But you're not cooking yet. I will soon. She opened her arms. Come. He walked into her embrace, soft and warm and so full of trust it broke her in half. She held him tightly. His head rested on her chest, right where the ache lived. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. She wanted to say, "Your father doesn't want to know you anymore." She wanted to say, "He has a new life now, one where you're a secret he keeps behind passwords and polite statements." She wanted to say, "Nothing. Nothing is wrong. Everything is wrong." But she only said, "Nothing, my love. Just tired." He nodded like he understood. And maybe he did. Children often sense more than we gave them credit for. "Can we have pancakes?" he asked. Mara smiled faintly. "Of course." As he scampered off, she picked up the phone again, reread the message, and saved it under a new label, The End. But something inside her whispered, this wasn't the end. It was just the first chapter of learning to live with a truth she didn't ask for. Of learning how to raise a son in the silence a man left behind. And maybe, just maybe, finding out that even when tomorrow is denied to you, you still have today. Chapter 2, The Words I Can't Unhear. Mara. Later that morning the message was still there, waiting. Just like him. Not the living, breathing man who once kissed the mole on her shoulder like it was sacred. No. That version of Ayo was long gone, swept under a tide of promotion letters, wedding invites, and family group chats she'd never be part of. What remained was this cold string of text, delivered in the early hours like an assassin. Greater than this is the last sum of money I'm giving you. Mara sat at the edge of the bed, knees pressed together, one hand wrapped around the phone like it might fall apart if she let go. She read it again. And again. Like if she could just decipher the punctuation or space between the words, it would make sense. Why did he say, after all, we had a sincere relationship? What did that mean? Sincere like a goodbye letter. Sincere like a lie told with tears. And then, please take good care of my youngest son. That line, God. That line wrapped itself around her throat. She whispered the words aloud like they were a curse. Take good care. Like I wasn't already? Kelechi was in the living room, building towers out of bread crusts and laughter. He hummed to himself, the way children do when the world is still small and safe. But Mara's world had split. Not in half. Into fragments. She opened her message inbox again, not the bank alert this time, but their old thread. It stretched back over 6 years. The first message, greater than hey. Are you the girl in the yellow wrapper from yesterday? You have the kind of smile that can confuse a man. Then photos, selfies, receipts from pizza dates, screenshots of songs they used to send each other. She scrolled through the months, the years, until the tone shifted. Until the sweetness turned to silence. There was a message from her, sent 2 months ago. Greater than Kelechi lost his first tooth today. He kept it under his pillow. He thinks the tooth fairy will bring him a toy. What do I tell him when it's not there? He hadn't replied. She had covered it up quickly, told Kelechi the fairy must have missed their flat, and would come the next night. She slipped a 500 note under his pillow while he slept, smiling through tears as he squealed the next morning. He had thanked the fairy with so much joy it hurt her chest. And now here she was, trying to make sense of an exit disguised as a transaction. She turned the phone over again and stared at the plain wooden floor of her bedroom. There was a crack near the wardrobe, a thin line that had widened over time, like something trying to divide the room in two. Mara used to imagine repairing it, but now she found comfort in its brokenness. At least it was honest. There were some words you couldn't unhear, no matter how many times you tried to talk over them with daily chores and gospel playlists. Words like, "I didn't plan to fall for you." "It's not about love, it's about what's best." "I need space." "Don't make this harder than it already is." "Please don't contact me anymore in the future." The rhythm of abandonment had a beat she could now hum in her sleep. She stood, phone in hand, and went to the small box beside the bookshelf. Inside were old mementos, baby socks, ultrasound prints, an old photo strip of her and Ayo at a Papa amusement park, laughing like fools under a cotton candy sky. She picked up the photo. He had kissed her cheek in the last frame. She had squinted into the sun, saying, "Maybe we'll bring our child here one day." They never did. The photo slipped from her fingers and fluttered down like an autumn leaf, landing face down on the cold floor. She heard a knock at the door. Not a loud one, just a neighbor's knuckle on wood. Mara. It was Mama Nkiru from upstairs. "Abby, you in house?" She wiped her face quickly and composed herself. "Yes, Ma. I day come." When she opened the door, Mama Nkiru stood holding a bowl wrapped in nylon. "Hot okra soup," the woman said. "Just made. I get extra." Mara managed a small smile. "God bless you, Ma." As the older woman turned to leave, she paused and glanced at Mara's eyes. "You day okay?" she asked gently. "Your face don't change small." Mara opened her mouth to lie, but her voice cracked. "I day manage." Mama Nkiru nodded knowingly. "Nah so. Life hard sometimes. But you strong, my dear. And you get that boy. That one alone? If it carry you through." Mara blinked back fresh tears. "Thank you, Ma. Take the soup. At small crayfish next time, eat sweet well. She left, humming to herself, her wrapper swishing behind her like a wave retreating from shore. Mara closed the door and set the bowl on the table. She looked at her phone again. The message was still there. The words were still unhearing. Still unhealable. But something inside her shifted, just slightly. Maybe she couldn't unhear them. But she could decide what to say next. Chapter 3, Frozen Coffee. Mara, same day, afternoon. The coffee had gone cold, before she even took a sip. Mara stood at the kitchen sink, mug in hand, watching a fly buzz near the window screen. The fly was the only thing moving. Everything else, her heartbeat, her thoughts, the stretch of afternoon sun across the tiled floor, felt stuck. Suspended. Like the day was holding its breath with her. She had boiled the water, measured the instant granules, stirred in 2 teaspoons of powdered milk. All the motions were there. But not the mind. Not the mouth. The cup was still full. And cold. Kelechi was outside on the veranda with his sketchbook, drawing something with bright yellow crayons. He'd said it was a superhero this time. His power is lightning, but he also cries when people are sad, he'd explained proudly. Mara had nodded, trying to summon the strength to smile. "Like your daddy?" she had almost said. But didn't. The mug slipped from her fingers and landed with a thud on the Formica counter. She hadn't meant to let go. It didn't break. It just sat there, shivering slightly before settling. like it was mocking her inability to fall apart. She pressed both palms against the counter and stared at her own reflection in the kettle. Her face looked unfamiliar, eyes too wide, lips too still, the quiet kind of sorrow that lies behind the skin. It was the kind of face that could walk through Oshodi Market and still go unnoticed. She exhaled sharply, then reached for the mug again and placed it in the microwave. Press 2 o'clock. Listen to the hum. Watch the numbers. 158. 132. 048. 013. 002. Beep. She didn't touch it. Instead, she walked to the window. Outside, the sky was turning that burnt lemon color Lagos skies often became before rain or revelation. A hawker was pushing a wheelbarrow of oranges down the street. 2 children were chasing a puppy with their sandals in their hands. And still, inside her body, nothing moved. This was what the message had done. It wasn't just the words. It was the finality. The way Ayo had sent them without room for reply. Like a judge delivering a sentence without trial. And maybe, just maybe, she was guilty. Guilty of believing too much. Guilty of thinking sincerity could save a love that had already begun to rot quietly from the roots. She turned from the window and sat down slowly at the table. The microwave beeped again. The coffee sat untouched. The scent of burnt okra lingered in the air from lunch. She tried to cook for Kelechi earlier, but had forgotten the pot on the stove while lost in memory. He hadn't noticed. He'd just eaten the rice plain, humming a tune from school, chewing with the seriousness of a boy with no idea much depended on his joy. She was grateful for that. She reached for her phone and opened the message again. Greater than let bygones be bygones. Ayo had once said that phrase when they were still together. He had spilled palm oil on the rug after eating a mullah with reckless abandon. She had scolded him playfully. He had laughed and said, "Let bygones be bygones. Life's too short to fight over rugs." Back then, it had sounded charming. Now it sounded like betrayal dipped in good English. Her sister would say, "See him mouth. Talking about bygones like you're not the mother of his child." I beg. Ada had always been the fire to her water. But Mara was tired of burning. Even quietly. She stood again. Walked to the fridge. Opened it. Closed it. She wasn't hungry. The coffee beeped a 3rd time. She walked back to the microwave, took out the mug, and carried it outside to the veranda. Kelechi looked up at her, his drawing now filled with lightning bolts and purple clouds. "Mummy, see," he said, holding it up. She bent and looked. The superhero looked oddly sad. Tears were falling from his eyes, but his hands held a glowing shield. "What's his name?" she asked. "Stormcry," he said confidently. Mara blinked. "Why does he cry?" "Because sometimes, even superheroes miss someone." Her breath caught. He hadn't meant it that way. He couldn't have. But the words fell like a stone in her chest anyway. She sat beside him. Sipped the coffee. It was warm now. Barely. "Stormcry is very strong," she whispered. Kelechi nodded. "He can even fix broken things." "Like what?" He pointed to a jagged crack on the concrete step. "Like that. Or like when the rain makes the power go off. Or when mummies cry." She smiled then. Really smiled. It hurt a little. But it was real. She took another sip of the coffee. This time she let it settle. Maybe the day hadn't frozen after all. Maybe it was just waiting for her to catch up.